David is a name carried by millions of ordinary people across the world. It sits on birth certificates, school registers, and office doors without anyone giving it a second glance. But David is not ordinary. It is the name of a shepherd boy who killed a giant, built an empire, wrote poetry that is still read 3,000 years later, and became the ancestor that 3 of the world's major religions trace their most sacred bloodlines back to. The journey that name took to reach you crosses 3,000 years, 3 continents, and more history than most names will ever touch. David begins in ancient Hebrew as Dawid, sometimes written Dawid in the original script. The meaning is debated, but the most widely accepted interpretation is beloved, someone deeply loved, cherished, chosen. Some scholars propose it derives from an even older Semitic root meaning uncle or kinsman, pointing to tribal kinship structures in ancient Middle Eastern culture, where belonging to the right bloodline determined everything about your life, your safety, and your future. What is not debated is the age of the name. Dawid appears in the Hebrew scriptures as one of the most significant personal names in the entire text, not simply as a historical figure, but as a theological and political identity around which an entire civilization organized itself. The name passed from Hebrew into Greek as David or David in the Septuagint translation, from Greek into Latin as David, unchanged, which is itself significant, since Latin scribes almost always adapted foreign names into Latin phonetic patterns. The fact that David crossed into Latin intact suggests it was already carrying enough cultural weight that changing it felt wrong. From Latin, it entered every European language in essentially the same form. David in English, French, German, and Spanish, Dafydd in Welsh, David in Scottish Gaelic, Daithí in Irish. The same ancient Hebrew name, carried unchanged across 3,000 years and a dozen languages. Almost nothing survives human history that intact. To understand why the name David becomes so powerful, you need to understand the man it was built around. David, according to the Hebrew scriptures, began as the youngest son of a man named Jesse, a shepherd from Bethlehem in the hill country of Judah. He was so insignificant in his own family that when the prophet Samuel came to Jesse's house to anoint the next king of Israel, Jesse didn't even bother calling David in from the fields. He presented his 7 older sons one by one. Samuel rejected all 7. Only then did Jesse mention there was one more, the youngest out with the sheep. That detail is deliberately humiliating. In ancient Middle Eastern culture, the youngest son was the least significant member of a family. He had no inheritance, no status, no claim to anything. He watched sheep. He was, in the social terms of his world, nobody. And then he walked into the room and Samuel anointed him king. What happened next is one of the most famous stories in human history. The Philistine army had assembled against Israel, and their champion, a warrior named Goliath of Gath, described as over 9 feet tall, armored from head to foot, carrying a spear whose iron head alone weighed 15 pounds, had been challenging the Israelite army to send out a single fighter to face him in single combat. For 40 days, nobody had moved. David arrived at the battle lines carrying food for his older brothers. He heard Goliath's challenge. He asked why nobody was fighting him. His brothers told him to go back to his sheep. He didn't go back. He went to King Saul. He said he had killed lions and bears with his bare hands to protect his flock. He said he would fight Goliath. He refused the armor Saul offered him because he wasn't used to it. He picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream. He walked out to face a professional warrior who had been winning battles since before David was born. And he killed him with a sling and a stone before Goliath ever got close enough to use his spear. That story, a nobody from nowhere, refusing to accept the limits the world placed on him, walking directly toward the thing everyone else was running from, is why the name David has carried the weight it carries for 3,000 years. It is not a story about strength. It is a story about who gets to decide how the story ends. The Goliath story is where most people's knowledge of David stops. But it is only the beginning. After killing Goliath, David spent years as a military commander under King Saul, winning battle after battle, becoming so popular with the Israelite people that Saul grew afraid of him and tried to have him killed. David spent years as a fugitive, hunted across the wilderness of Judah by the king he had served loyally. When Saul died in battle against the Philistines, David was anointed king, first over the tribe of Judah, then after a civil war over all 12 tribes of Israel. He captured Jerusalem, at that point, a Jebusite city that neither the Israelites nor the Philistines had managed to take, and made it his capital. He brought the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, making it the religious center of Israelite life. He defeated the Philistines, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, and the Arameans, expanding the territory under Israelite control to its greatest historical extent. The empire David built stretched from the Sinai Peninsula in the south to the Euphrates River in the north, covering territory that today includes parts of Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. It was the largest political entity the Israelite people ever controlled, before or since. He also wrote poetry. The Book of Psalms, 150 poems and songs, many of them attributed to David directly, is one of the most read, most quoted, and most set to music texts in human history. Psalm 23, "The Lord's is my shepherd," has been recited at more deathbeds, more funerals, more moments of human crisis and comfort across more centuries than almost any other piece of writing in the world. A shepherd who became a warrior who became a king who built an empire, an emperor who wrote poetry. The name David was built around all of it simultaneously. Here is what makes the name David extraordinary beyond its own history. 3 of the world's major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all claim a specific relationship to David's bloodline. And all 3 of them built theological structures of enormous importance around that claim. In Judaism, David is the greatest king in Israelite history, the man who unified the 12 tribes, captured Jerusalem, and whose bloodline the Messiah is prophesied to descend from. The coming of the Messiah, in traditional Jewish theology, is inseparable from the restoration of the Davidic royal line. David's bloodline is not just history, it is prophecy. In Christianity, the entire theological significance of Jesus of Nazareth is built partly on his claimed descent from David. Both Matthew and Luke include detailed genealogies tracing Jesus' lineage back through Joseph's line to David, establishing him as a legitimate heir to the Davidic royal bloodline, and therefore a legitimate candidate for the messianic title. The phrase "Son of David" appears throughout the New Testament as a title of messianic recognition. Without David, the theological framework OAS the Gospels collapses. In Islam, Dawood, the Arabic form of David, is recognized as a prophet and king, given the Zabur, the Psalms, as a holy scripture by God directly. He is one of the most significant prophets in Islamic theology, a man of extraordinary faith who communicated with birds and animals, worked iron with his bare hands, and whose wisdom was legendary across the ancient world. One name, 3 global religions. 3 separate theological traditions, all claiming a direct relationship to the same ancient shepherd king's bloodline. No other personal name in human history carries that weight simultaneously. David spread across European naming culture through 2 separate channels, the religious and the royal. And which channel placed it in your family line tells you something specific about where your family came from. In Welsh culture, the name David the Welsh form of David, carries a specifically national significance. Saint Davy, Dewi Sant, is the patron saint of Wales, a 6th century bishop whose feast day on the 1st of March is the Welsh National Day. In Scottish Gaelic culture, Daipid, pronounced roughly as DV, appears in Highland family lines with significant frequency from the medieval period onward, carried partly through the influence of the Scottish Church and partly through the political connection between Scotland and the broader Celtic Christian tradition that venerated David as a model of the warrior saint simultaneously. In Jewish families across Europe and beyond, David has been one of the most consistently used male names for 3,000 years. A direct, unbroken line of naming tradition from the biblical king to the present day that makes it one of the most genealogically continuous names in human history. In English and American families, David became dominant in the Protestant tradition through the Reformation's emphasis on Old Testament names. A deliberate cultural shift away from Catholic saint names toward biblical Hebrew names that gave the Protestant communities of Britain and America a naming vocabulary rooted directly in ancient Israel. 3,000 years ago, a shepherd boy from Bethlehem walked out into a valley with 5 smooth stones and changed the history of the world. The name he carried survived everything that followed: empire, exile, 3 world religions, centuries of European history, the Reformation, the colonial era, and the modern world. Arriving here, in the name sitting on your birdie certificate, still carrying every ounce of what it was built around, David is not a common name. It is the oldest, most theologically significant, most historically loaded male name in the Western world. And it chose you. Subscribe. See ya.